Hi everyone, this video is learning all about what classes are, CSS classes in Webflow. How do we style things? It's a long one because it's a relatively important topic that is quite foreign to people new to web design. If you already know what a CSS class is, probably watch it anyway. There's some Webflow quirks that we need to get a hold of before we can move on with the course. All right, let's go. So what is a class? A CSS class, the long version, is a way of styling the elements on the page. Gives them color and style and padding and what font to use. Okay, so we drag these kind of like block level elements onto the page, just these kind of like things, we just lump them on, and then we want to style them, we select them, and over here, change the style. We did it to the background of the gray before. So let's do another one. Let's click on our heading, okay, and let's have a little look at our the design we're following. Remember, you can pick whatever you want along on your own one. Let's go and style it. So I've got my heading selected. Now, the right way to do it is to go in here and say, okay, I've got my heading selected. I'm going to click in here and give it a name. So I'm going to say this is going to be Dan's heading. So give it a name. You can see over here, it's applied to it. Then I'm going to go style it. I'm going to say down here in typography, scroll down. Okay, there's my color. I'm going to say, click on the little thing there and say, actually, I want white. To get white, okay, it doesn't really matter what hue you're in, as long as you click, hold, and drag, kind of like all the way to that corner and kind of past it a little bit. Or you can type in FF. That is the code for white in web hexadecimal language. Okay, I'm gonna hit enter on my keyboard. I'm just gonna click out. Okay, and we've styled that heading white. Okay, so if I click on it, it's got a CSS class that I named Dan's heading, okay, and it tells things to be white. I can reuse it. Okay, I could say actually this paragraph here that I added, you are also, if I click in here, I can say, oh, look, here's all my other ones that I've made, my existing classes that made called Dan's heading. There you go. Dan's heading doesn't really do anything. All it does is makes things white. This is his only job in the world. So Dan's heading, if I'm going to use it like this, might be better called white text. Okay, and I can just apply it to different things. So you have now created your first CSS class, okay, called heading, or Dan's heading in my case. So selecting something and purposely adding a class is what you want to do. But Webflow knows that people just hack around and, do it. And what they do is they actually make classes for you. We've already made one. We've already made our first CSS. This is like your second CSS style. So remember when we had our section, the background? So how do I click the section? Remember? Okay, you can either do it down here. Okay, or click inside first and say, actually not the heading, I want the section. Click on that. Okay, or remember you can go to your navigator and click on in there. The section has a style. Okay, how did it get its style? Can you see there? That got automatically named for us. That little blue thing, that wasn't there before. The site wasn't born with it. It was just added when you started trying to change the color and you forgot to name it. So it says, oh, I'll just name it for you. So you will end up with lots of that, especially when you're new. So let me show you an example. Don't follow along. So I'm going to add a new section. So section, I'm going to drag it off, try and get it in the right place. Whoop, that didn't work. Okay, undo, there we go. I'm going to go section. You can't put one inside of each other. It's against the rules of the internet, or at least the rules of Webflow. Okay, so it says section elements cannot be nested inside of each other. So okay, I'm going to put it down here somewhere where you can see that it says body at the top there. You can get a bit higher. It's inside the container, which is kind of where I want it. Inside the container, not inside this other section because it won't let me. So kind of get it in the right spot. Even if you don't get it in the right spot, I want to show you something. Actually, no, let's finish this example. So I'm going to get in the right place. And I'm going to style it. And in my little mock-up here, you can see it's white background. So, oh, cool, I'm going to do white background. Well, white's not going to be that helpful at the moment. Let's pick any old background. So over here, what I want you to do, I'm going to change the background. Watch this. Okay, watch this bit up here. I'm going to say, can we scroll it up so it's closer? It is. So watch there. I'm going to say you're going to have a background color of really bright red. Can you see? It said, hey, you didn't give it a name, so I'm going to name it for you, section 2. Okay, when you're new, you'll end up with section 42, okay, which isn't very helpful. So what you want to do is be a bit more purposeful. So I'm going to undo it. I want you to see if you can add your section, give it a go, and then let's give it a name before we style it. Okay, I'm going to call it section. I'm going to use title case here. It doesn't matter what you name your CSS classes. Okay, you can give them any old name. I think they have to start with a letter, not a number. That is important. This is going to be section, and this is going to be my sponsors. So later on, I can find it easily. And I'm going to now pick a really interesting color. Wrong color, where we want backgrounds. Here we go. Click in here for color. I want to drag around. until I get something. I'm just going to use kind of another gray for the moment. Okay, so I'm being a bit more purposeful now. I've created a style, applied it to the section called sponsors. And you'd be like, well, what do we do with the one we already made? So we're going to select it. So we're going to click in here and we're going to do something. Well, let's click on it down here and say, I want this section selected. Okay, instead of it called section, because that's not a very good name, you can just right click on it. No, you can't. You just double click on it and say section. And this one's called my hero. Okay, so now I've got a hero section and I've got a sponsors section. There we go. After a while, you get in the habit of making names first, but for the beginning, you'll end up making them and naming them afterwards, and that's totally okay. Now, next thing to know about CSS classes is that it is more often, it's useful to style the section or the thing that it's in rather than the elements itself. We styled, remember, we used Dan's heading, okay, and we put it on both of these. Okay, and that's fine, you can keep doing that, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's probably better. Let's get rid of it. So how do we remove a tag? Okay, over here, drop down, there's one that says just remove that one, and I'm gonna remove it from here as well, remove that class. So it's gone, okay? It's easier, instead of kind of creating a class and doing it to both of them, you say, actually, I want everything in my section for hero to have typography down here that is white. It's not really, you don't have to do it that way, but you see it's easier. It's easier to style the container that it's in than the individual elements often. Okay, same with the padding. Let's look at our example. Okay, there's a big push off this side. So I could go heading, if I don't give it a name and I add some, let's say some padding on the left-hand side here by clicking, holding and dragging. You see it instantly made something called heading. And if I make another one, it's going to be heading 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 74. So I don't want to do it that way. So I'm going to get rid of it, remove this class. So I could name it and then add the padding, which is slightly better. But actually it's easier, just go, I want the section. Okay, so I'm clicking on my hero section. I'm going to say, I want padding for everything in there. Click, hold and drag it. There we go. And everything comes along for all right. Same with the top. I want padding from the top too. This one's a little tricky. You drag it the way you want it to push. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. So there, I wanted the number to go up, so I dragged it up. Nope, we want to drag it down. There we go. How much padding do I want? We're just going to guess it for the moment. I'm going to kind of look back here and say, oh, yeah, something about there. That looks good. Want some padding at the bottom. How much padding is down here? About the same as the top. So I'm going to say you're 23. So I'm going to click the bottom and say 23. Now, I have some problems with numbers. I realize I said 23, it's 53. One of my weird quirks, you'll probably see it again in the course. My eyes, my brain, my mouth, they don't sometimes coordinate. So anyway, we've very purposely made our section. We've given it a background color. Okay, where is it? Background color. I'm scrolling down, there it is there. And we've said everything inside of here is got a text color of white and some padding going around. Probably some padding on this side as well. Drag it the way you want it to go. Here we go. So look at the example, kind of that far. Actually, it doesn't really need that. I want that paragraph to come in a little bit there, but I want it different over here. So now this is a really good example where actually, if I make the padding for everything, where I want the paragraph text, let's say, let's go all the way across. Here we go. The heading is not going to be long enough. There you go. So this is where actually the padding for the container is not that useful. So what you can say is go actually I'm going to turn the padding down. Actually, I'm just going to turn it off for the section. So to turn it off, there's a couple of ways. You can just hit 0 is kind of working. Okay. So removing something, can you see it's blue? And this one's not blue. Okay. Blue means I've made it be 0. I've said be 0. This is grayed out because it's like, I'm just guessing. I'm doing whatever. It's not set to 0, it just happens to be 0. I'm being very specific here. So what you can do is you can hold down the Option key on a Mac, Alt key on a PC and click something. You see it went gray? It just kind of says, I'm not saying be 0, just be whatever your default is. Just go about your day. And now what I want to do is I want to say this paragraph text here. I'm going to say you're my paragraph. I'm going to use the letter P. Okay, then a space because I'm going to probably have more paragraph text in my whole document. So it's going to say paragraph for the hero. Okay, a little special class that we're going to make. Okay, create it. You can either hit enter or click this. I want this to have some padding over here, which is different from the kind of section. And what happened there Why isn't it kind of listening to the section? The section's kind of like a parent, okay? He's saying, all right, do these things. The children inside of here can override them. It's called specificity. We'll talk about it. It's more specific. So this paragraph text is getting some vague instructions from high above. If he gets some more specific instructions, he will override it and say, I hear you, but I want to do this other thing. So get the generic stuff into the kind of outside wrapper, which in our case is something called section hero. And then if you want to do little more specific things inside, give them their own class name. And in our case, we're just doing padding. Now, class naming gives everybody anxiety. And even if you're the best, most diligent, I'm pointing at myself, you can't see that, but I'm kind of diligent and I like all this stuff and I understand it all. You always end up with heading 17. Okay, but maybe not that bad. You'll end up with classes that you start off with best intentions and you end up making it work, but maybe not as, I don't know, as organized as you'd hoped, but you will get better. And in this course, you'll notice that there is kind of 3 sections for CSS. Just introducing a little bit now, enough to get us going. And then later on, we'll do a level 2 and a level 3. We'll be hardcore CSS coders by the end. Speaking of code, let's have a quick look. 2 things I want to do. I want to see the code and the navigator panel. Let's do the navigator panel because it's quick. There's a lot of like clicking on this and then figuring, say I want to drag this into the next section. I can probably do it because it's not that hard. Ooh, very good point. I got 3 things to tell you. The first one is the navigator panel is just handy when it's always out. So it means when you're doing stuff from the navigator panel and you're like, okay, I want to drag this in. You see it doesn't go away. It stays there all the time and it's easy to actually drag straight into this. You can say I want a heading inside of the section, rather than trying to drag it on the page. You can do it, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm gonna undo. So the navigator panel, if you go to it, okay, because otherwise it automatically closes and it's super handy to be open all the time. So do that with me, you'll get used to it. Okay, and this option up here that says pin the navigator, don't close. There was 2 things. What were the other 2? You wait there. Oh yeah, I remember. So let's have a look, because I said you've been writing code. Have you been writing code? How do you know? You can go up here and there's an option that says export code. Okay, you can click on it. To export everything, you need a paid account. Okay, but you can see a chunk of it in here. It's loading the code. Come on, code loading. I'm not sure. Mine normally always loads. Let's close it down and try it again. Nope. Yes. Okay. So what code have we written? We've written some HTML, some CSS, and some JavaScript. HTML. So we knew there was a body tag. Look at that. That's what it is. So if you were doing I've got a web design essentials, we'd be writing this code and saying body. Inside is a div class called container. Inside of that is something called section. Okay, and we are writing code and it is nice and pretty and well laid out. It's easy to read, but we're just doing it in a kind of a more visual way. You never have to look at this side. It's just interesting. I think it is anyway. So divs are just generic containers, divisions, divider tags. Okay, and we've got one called container that keeps ours in the middle. Okay, we've got a section and we gave it a class name of section hero. We've got another section here. We gave a class name. Okay, so div class of section sponsors. So this is in the HTML. We've kind of said, here's a box. It's called section sponsors. Over here in my CSS, we've styled it. We've said, okay, where is my section sponsors? There it is there. And this is what I want you to style it. This is the CSS class you've made. Okay, and this class is called CSS, section sponsors, and that's the background color. That's all we've done. We've done a bit more to the section called hero. We added some padding and background color and color of the font. Remember Dan's heading in there, we don't need anymore, but it's set the color to FFF, which is white, and some random heading one we made. Okay, so we are writing HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript, we're not really touching at the moment there, but it is getting produced for us. Cool, huh? You're a coder. That's why it's like no code coding. The other thing I'll mention while we're in here, can you see class names have, if you were doing my other web design course, okay, we use VS Code, you'd actually have to know that a class name starts with a period and then it has to be lowercase, you can't have spaces, all these sorts of things. Whereas Webflow kind of says, we don't want to teach people that. You type anything in there and we'll convert it to you to the right kind of syntax, which is there's no spaces. So they just put in hyphens where I put in spaces and they made it all lowercase automatically for us. We never have to come in here. I think it's useful. Anyway, have a look at your code, see what you made. Now, I said there was only 2 things, and then there was one thing, this. You saw it, I ignored it. So it's a good example, okay, is that this thing here is being told a couple of things. It's being told to be this paragraph hero that I named, Okay, and what does that tell us to do? It tells us that it wants, the only thing it's telling us to be is, we only said be, what was it, padding. That's the only thing we did to this thing. Everything else that makes it white, okay, that pushes it from the side comes from, where does that come from? That's right, it comes from the section. The section says be this from the top, this from the side, and be a text color of white. He says blue when things are done, and everything's white or gray when you haven't said to do anything. We'll discuss what the amber color is later on. But so this tag here, this paragraph text, is getting some commands from, it's getting one specific command connected to it saying be padding on this side. So when I drag it over here, that's the only thing that comes along with it is this thing here, because everything else that makes it white and pushes it down from the left, from the top and the left, is coming from this fella, okay, from this section hero. So that's an interesting thing to understand. Does it help or make it more confusing this early on? Now, why don't we just apply it to everything so that when you drag it down here, it's white and padded over? You can do that. It's just very repetitive, especially if I then say I'm making say it's a blog site and I've got, my blog's probably only got 4 posts because that's as far as I get before I lose interest. But I love making videos though. But let's say you are an avid blog writer, or your client is, and you make 1,000 pages, and you've applied one to every single bit of paragraph text, and they say, can you make the font bigger? You can say no, because you're gonna have to find every single one, click on them and go and change them all, okay, to some other style. And whereas if you just do it to the kind of containers, it's relatively easy because everything inside comes from the right. You say, actually, I want the text now to be, awful red contrast, easy. And if there was 1,000 bits of text in this section, it might be like the article section or the blog post section. Everything comes along for the right. All right, that was a long one, but it's pretty fundamental to the rest of this course, understanding classes, how they apply, and a little bit of specificity. Remember, specificity is a hard word to say, okay? And it's a way of saying, I'm gonna be really specific for this bit, but everything else is just generic. Follow me, unless I tell you to do otherwise. All right, that is it. On to the next video. That, my friend, is the end of the video, but not the end of the course. The video you just watched, it is a small part of my larger course called Webflow Essentials. So if you enjoyed the video, my teaching style, there'll be a card up here you can click, or a link in the description, okay? And come join me for the full course. Like the video as well if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff, but hopefully see you in the course. Bye.